down and sort of peeked out, and an enormous ship. I would have to say that it was two, three times the size of a 747. And it completely silently glided over across the highway, and we saw it go off into the distance. So there was no mistaking that that was not anything at that time that would have existed conventionally or militarily.
I was a lieutenant from the Bulgarian Air Force. My plane was MiG-21. What I believe there is much more going on than we can see with our naked eye.
Being in the 3rd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, we were pretty active. We were on the East Coast in an area called the Punch Bowl, which is just down the road from Heartbreak Ridge. We had a lull in the fighting, so we just sat around and played poker. And somebody looked up and said, "What the heck is that?" We all looked up, and there was, it looked for all the world like a chrome hubcap setting up above us. And if you looked at it, it kind of had a watery, shimmery look and a little bit bluish white periphery. And from time to time it would appear to be elliptical and sometimes circular. So I imagine it was rocking a little bit. And it's just a hint of a dome sometimes on it. But we watched it, and our colonel came out and took a look at it. He made a phone call. Pretty soon, 4 F-86D model Sabre jets came out, and they tried to get to the object. And it appeared that they hit some barrier that you couldn't see, because they would stall out and do a 1.5 turn spin and then pull out at the bottom. Flying saucer finally decided to leave and got very, very bright, and it was pretty difficult to look directly at it, but it rose straight up and it went through the overcast. Now when it went through the overcast, there were 3 black rings that radiated from the flange of the craft and went from the flange of the craft all the way over the horizon with no sound at all. And what it looked like was somebody dropping a pebble in a glassy pool of water, and the rings were spreading out.
In January of 05, 5:24 in the evening, I was driving south on Interstate 25, south of Denver, and I see this black object coming up the road, above the road, in the sky. And I thought, that's curious, what is that? As I get close, as we close, I see that it is a solid object. I thought it might have been Canadian geese for a start. I thought it might have been a piece of plastic blown up in the breeze like a kite. But I could see it was a solid object. It was not affected by a breeze in any way. It was flying on a straight course. It looked black. It may have been some color, but because it was silhouetted against the sky, it looked very dark. It looked like a plank. It looked like a board, an oblong shape. It was bizarre. It had a couple of little bumps on the leading edge on one end. I thought, well, if it's just junk, that would be random, perhaps. It certainly wouldn't be symmetrical. And I looked out the other side, and sure enough, it had the identical bumps on the other side of the leading edge. So it was an anomalous object. Could I identify it? Heck no. I couldn't relate to it. It had no sweep back, no anhedral, no dihedral. Didn't have any external power plants, no wings or no tail empennage, flight control surfaces or probes.
A search of the term fast walkers on the internet immediately reveals references that fast walker is a code name used by various government agencies to refer to UFOs, or, as they are sometimes called, non-referenced targets.
Okay, this holding pretty well. Craft that I recorded that did the 180-degree turn down on this portion of the screen, they're called fast walkers because of their speed. The whole episode took about half a second to perform or less. We're talking milliseconds. And that kind of lets you know that it's not an Earth satellite that we're looking at, because it's moving so fast. Plus the fact our satellites don't change direction 180 degrees without changing speed, or 90 degrees. And I have seen many of the shadows go up and do a 90 degree right across the screen. And sometimes you'll see 3 or 4 objects in formation. It looks like formation flying, and one will branch off to the left and one will go to the right. Somebody coined the phrase fast walker, and it's appropriate.
The fast walkers are these very rapid moving electrogravitic and anti-gravity discs and craft of various shapes. The National Security Agency actually for a long time had called these ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles. And from the military who have tracked these objects, and they've been called fast walkers because, as opposed to slow walkers, which are satellites, because they move at enormous speeds. For example, they've been tracked at going tens of thousands of miles per hour in the atmosphere and make a right-hand turn without decelerating. Well, you can't do that with a conventional system. You have to correct for gravity and mass inertia. And that's what these things are doing. So these have been tracked on dedicated and classified radar systems. Occasionally, people who are on an ordinary system will pick them up.
Today, the internet is literally alive with websites that are filled with detailed reports, many of which include convincing videos and pictures of unknown crafts and alien-like creatures.
I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I am a sky watcher, a UFO hunter. I have a website called seeingufos.com. I had an interest in UFOs my whole life, but officially got started on April 15th of 2004 when I walked my dog in the middle of the night, looked up in the sky and saw some strange lights. I've got over 200 UFO video clips on my website. I'm more interested in the day footage. Now, the day footage is completely different because that's harder to dismiss, you know, so I would have to say every other month it seems like I'm catching something. And I go out every day, pretty much 6 days a week, a couple hours a day. You know, you add all those hours up and that's a lot of time just to catch one thing for 20 seconds. But that's more than most people see in a lifetime, so I think that's better than nothing.
Well, I'm involved in the political resolution of the what we now call, I prefer to call the truth embargo that the government imposed on the facts regarding an extraterrestrial presence. That presence has been established, I think, many times over by the citizen science research that's been going on since the 40s. The government did studies, but they were primarily for show. And the issue, from a government standpoint, has been managed very intensely since '47, at minimum. Managed in the sense that the government was going to deal with it, but deal with it within the national security structure, and never acknowledge that there's anything to this. But in fact, there is. I mean, we are being engaged as a planet and as a species by other beings, possibly multiple species. This has just been proven beyond any doubt at all. Anyone who reads the research who isn't compromised by being either an idiot or in the employ of the government management of the issue can only arrive at one conclusion. The evidence is overwhelming. Videotape, daylight discs, nighttime discs, photographs, direct pilot sightings by the thousands, millions of sightings around the world, direct testimony from direct government involvement, and of course you've got an entire contactee body of evidence that's now in the tens of thousands.